He was worth billions. But for 3 hours he didn't say a single word. They called him the Ghost of Wall Street, a man who could buy the entire city block but refused to order off the menu. Every waitress at the Obsidian was terrified of him. They knew one mistake meant being fired on the spot. But when Sophia, a broke waitress drowning in debt, approached his table, she didn't see a tyrant. She saw a clue hidden in his cufflinks. She took a breath and whispered 5 words in his native tongue. What happened next didn't just break his silence, it shattered her entire reality and exposed a secret the elite had been trying to bury for decades. You think you know where this is going. You have no idea. The rain in Manhattan wasn't just rain. It was a freezing, relentless assault that seemed to specifically target anyone with a hole in their shoe. Sophia trudged through the employee entrance of the Obsidian, shaking out her umbrella. Her feet already ached, and her shift hadn't even started. "You're late, Russo," Marcus snapped. Marcus was the floor manager, a man who wore suits that were too tight and cologne that smelled like desperate ambition. He tapped his watch, a counterfeit Rolex he liked to flash as if it were the real deal. "It's 4:58, Marcus," Sophia said, clocking in. "I'm 2 minutes early." "You look late," he sneered, looking her up and down. "Fix your hair. We have a VIP tonight. A real VIP. Not the usual tech bros or washed-up actors. This is old money. Dangerous money." Sophia sighed, heading to the locker room. She didn't care about the money. She just cared about the tips. Her mother's surgery at Mount Sinai was scheduled for next week, and the insurance company, Blue Haven Health, had just denied the claim for the anesthesia. She needed $3,000 by Friday, or the surgery was off. When she walked out onto the floor, the atmosphere in the restaurant was suffocating. The Obsidian was the kind of place where a salad cost more than Sophia's rent. The walls were lined with dark velvet, and the lighting was so dim you needed perfect vision to read the prices. But tonight, the tension was focused on one spot. Table 4. It was the best table in the house, secluded in a semi-private alcove with a view of the city skyline. Sitting there was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than the restaurant's annual revenue. Charcoal grey, impeccable tailoring, no tie. He was reading a document on a tablet, a glass of water untouched beside him. "Who is he?" Sophia whispered to Chloe, another waitress who was hovering near the kitchen pass, looking pale. "I don't know," Chloe hissed, her hands shaking as she polished a spoon. "But Marcus is freaking out. He's been there for 45 minutes. He hasn't ordered. He hasn't looked up. He hasn't spoken a single word." "Did you ask him for a drink order?" "I tried," Chloe whispered frantically. "I went over and asked, 'Sparkling or still?' And he didn't even blink. It's like I wasn't there." Then Marcus sent Brad over. Brad tried to recommend the Wagyu. The guy just turned the page on his tablet. "It's creepy, Sophia. He's like a statue." Sophia looked at table 4 again. The man was older, maybe late 40s or early 50s, with silver-streaked black hair and a jawline that looked tense. He didn't look rude, exactly. He looked haunted. "Russo!" Marcus barked from across the room. He crooked a finger, summoning her. Sophia walked over. Marcus was sweating, wiping his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "Chloe is useless. Brad is an idiot," Marcus muttered. "You take table 4. "What's the strategy?" Sophia asked. "If he's not speaking, just get him to order," Marcus hissed. "That table has a $5,000 minimum spend. If he sits there all night drinking tap water, the owner is going to have my head on a platter. Go make him spend money. Flirt if you have to. Just get a bottle of wine open." Sophia stiffened. "I'm a waitress, Marcus, not an escort." "You're an employee who needs this job," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. I heard about the insurance denial, Sophia. It would be a shame if you lost your shifts right before your mum's operation. The threat hung in the air, cold and sharp. Sophia clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She swallowed her pride, grabbed a heavy leather-bound wine list, and turned toward table 4. She walked across the plush carpet, the sounds of the restaurant fading into a dull hum. As she approached the table, the air seemed to get colder. The man didn't move. He was staring at a document that looked like a legal contract. Sophia stood by the table for a moment, waiting for acknowledgement. Nothing. Good evening, sir, she said, her voice steady. My name is Sophia. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Silence. He didn't even twitch. I understand you haven't decided on a beverage yet, she continued, placing the wine list gently on the table, careful not to disturb his space. Might I recommend the 96 Barolo? It breathes very well in this humidity. Nothing. It was awkward, agonizingly so. Across the room, Marcus was watching like a hawk, making a cut-throat gesture to tell her to push harder. Sophia looked at the man closer. She noticed the details. The watch on his wrist was a Patek Philippe, but it was scratched, old, well-worn. The cufflinks were silver, shaped like tiny wolves. And then she saw it. On the table, next to his tablet, was a small, faded photograph. It was face down, but he was rubbing the corner of it with his thumb, a repetitive, soothing motion. He wasn't ignoring them because he was arrogant. He was ignoring them because he was somewhere else entirely. She saw the headline on his tablet screen before he swiped it away. It was an Italian news site, La Repubblica. The headline mentioned a merger involving Industry Moretti. Moretti. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Her grandmother, Nonna Rosa, used to tell stories about the Moretti family back in Tuscany. They were legends, ruthless in business, tragic in love. She took a risk, a massive one. Marcus wanted her to flirt. No, that wouldn't work on a man like this. This man needed something real. She stepped closer, dropping the professional waitress facade. Sophia didn't reach for the wine list. Instead, she reached for the water pitcher and poured a small amount into his glass, breaking the stillness. Signore, she said softly. The man's finger stopped rubbing the photo. She continued, but not in English. She switched to the dialect of Tuscany, a specific, warm, lilting Italian that she hadn't spoken since her grandmother passed away 3 years ago. Il silenzio è spesso la risposta più forte, ma qui il silenzio ti farà morire di fame. Silence is often the loudest answer, but here, silence will make you starve. The reaction was instantaneous. The man's head snapped up. For the first time, Sophia saw his eyes. They were dark, intense, and filled with a sudden, sharp shock. He looked at her, really looked at her. Not as a servant, but as a person. He stared at her for a long, uncomfortable 5 seconds. Marcus, watching from the distance, was probably hyperventilating, thinking Sophia had insulted the billionaire. Then the man's lips parted. His voice was gravelly, deep, unused to being used. Toscana? He asked. Tuscany? Sophia nodded, keeping her eyes locked on his. Sì. Mia nonna era di Siena. Ho imparato da lei. Yes. My grandmother was from Siena. I learned from her. The man let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. His shoulders dropped an inch. The ice wall he had built around himself evaporated, replaced by a profound weariness. Everyone else here, he said, switching to English but with a thick, elegant accent. They shout, they push. They offer me meat I do not want, and wine I do not need. That is their job, signore, Sophia said gently. They see the suit. They don't see the man. And what do you see? He asked, his gaze piercing. Sophia hesitated. This was the moment. She could lie and compliment him, or she could tell the truth. I see a man who is tired of the noise, she said, and I see a man who misses home. The billionaire stared at her. A slow, faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. It transformed his face from terrifying to strangely handsome. You are observant, he murmured, a dangerous quality. He closed the tablet, shutting off the business world. He turned the small photo over. It was a black and white picture of a vineyard with a young woman standing in front of the vines. She looked remarkably like Sophia. But Sophia knew it wasn't her. It was just a coincidence. Or maybe it was why he had let her speak. My name is Lorenzo, he said. Not Mr. Moretti. Just Lorenzo. Sophia, she replied. Sophia, he tested the name. Wisdom, it suits you. He gestured to the chair opposite him. Sit. Sophia froze. Sir, I can't. It's against policy. My manager, Marcus, he's watching. I'll be fired. Lorenzo turned his head slowly, his eyes locking onto Marcus across the room. Marcus, seeing the billionaire look at him, gave a nervous, thumbs-up gesture that looked pathetic. Lorenzo turned back to Sophia. If he fires you, I will buy this building and rehire you as the owner. Sit. It wasn't a request. It was a command, but given with a strange warmth. Sophia sat. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. This was insane. She was sitting at the VIP table during the dinner rush. I do not want the Wagyu, Lorenzo said, leaning in. I want ribollita. Do you know it? Bread soup? Sophia smiled. It's a peasant dish, sir. It's not on the menu at the Obsidian. We serve foam and caviar here. I don't care about the menu, Lorenzo said, his voice hardening slightly. I have been in meetings with lawyers for 6 days. I have eaten nothing but cold sandwiches and lies. I want ribollita, real ribollita. Can the chef make it? Sophia thought about the chef, a temperamental Frenchman named Jean-Luc, who threw pans when people asked for ketchup. Jean-Luc will refuse. He doesn't do off-menu. Lorenzo pulled a checkbook from his inside jacket pocket. He uncapped a gold fountain pen. Tell Jean-Luc that for a bowl of soup, I will pay $5,000. If he refuses, I will buy the restaurant across the street and put him out of business. Sophia's eyes widened. I will tell him. She stood up, her legs trembling. As she walked back toward the kitchen, Marcus intercepted her, grabbing her arm tightly. What the hell are you doing sitting down? Marcus hissed, his face red. And why is he writing a check? Did you upset him? If you cost us this client, Sophia, I swear to God. He wants soup, Marcus, Sophia said, pulling her arm away. He wants ribollita. Soup? We don't serve soup. He's paying $5,000 for it, Sophia said calmly. Marcus stopped, and his greed instantly overwrote his anger. 5,000? For soup? Yes. Tell Jean-Luc. Sophia went to the kitchen. The chaos of the dinner rush was in full swing, but everything seemed to slow down as she relayed the order. Jean-Luc cursed, spat in French, but when he heard the price, he started chopping vegetables. 10 minutes later, Sophia walked back out with a steaming bowl of rustic bread soup. It looked out of place among the crystal and silver of the Obsidian, but it smelled like home. She placed it in front of Lorenzo. He closed his eyes and inhaled the steam. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. He took a spoon, tasted it, and nodded. It is acceptable, but it lacks the rosemary. I told Jean-Luc that, Sophia said impulsively. He used time. He's stubborn. Lorenzo laughed, a rich, booming sound that made several other tables turn and look. The Ice King was laughing. "Sophia," he said, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin, "you are wasting your time carrying plates. What do you really want to do?" "I want to finish my degree," she admitted. "I study law, or I did, until money became tight." "Law," Lorenzo mused. "I hate lawyers, but I need them, always." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was black, heavy, with gold embossing. Moretti International. "I have a problem, Sophia," he said, his voice lowering, becoming serious again. "A problem that requires someone who notices details, someone who speaks the language of silence, someone who isn't afraid of powerful men." He slid the card across the table. "I am in New York because someone in my company is stealing from me. Someone high up. I don't know who to trust. My lawyers are compromised. My advisors are liars." He looked at her intensely. "I need a distinct pair of eyes. I need an assistant who is invisible to them, but sees everything. Quit this job, tonight. Come work for me. I will pay you 10 times what this Marcus pays you." Sophia stared at the card. It was the lifeline she needed. Her mother's surgery, her tuition, everything could be solved. But then, a shadow fell over the table. "Is everything satisfactory, Mr. Moretti?" It was Marcus, but he wasn't alone. Standing behind him was a tall, blonde woman in a red dress that looked like it was made of liquid danger. She had a cold, predatory smile. Lorenzo stiffened. He covered the business card with his hand, hiding it from view. "Elena," Lorenzo said, his voice dropping to absolute zero. "I didn't know you were in New York." "I go where the money goes, Lorenzo," the woman said, her eyes flickering to Sophia with immediate disdain. "And who is this? The help?" Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a rude interruption. The look Lorenzo gave the woman wasn't just annoyance. It was fear. Controlled, buried fear. Lorenzo stood up slowly. "Sophia, this is Elena Vance, my stepmother." The twist hit Sophia like a physical blow. Stepmother. She looked the same age as him. "And she," Lorenzo continued, looking at Eleanor with hatred, "is the reason I am here." Eleanor laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, darling, don't be dramatic. I'm here to save you from yourself." She turned to Sophia. "Run along, dear. The adults need to talk, and take that disgusting soup away." Sophia looked at Lorenzo. He gave her a tiny, imperceptible nod. "Go, but keep the card." Sophia snatched the card from under his hand, sliding it into her apron pocket, and stepped back. "As you wish," Sophia said. As she walked away, she felt Elena's eyes drilling into her back. She didn't know it yet, but by taking that card, she hadn't just accepted a job. She had declared war. Sophia didn't sleep that night. The business card burned a hole in her pocket as she sat by her mother's bedside at the cramped apartment in Queens. The rhythmic beeping of her mother's oxygen monitor was the only sound in the room. $3,000, her mother, Maria, whispered in her sleep, caught in a fever dream about their debts. Sophia smoothed her mother's hair. She had made a choice. The next morning, the obsidian was a memory. Marcus had screamed, threatened, and told her she would never work in this town again. Sophia had simply handed him her apron and walked out. She traded the smell of truffle oil and fear for the cold, sterile air of Midtown Manhattan. Standing in front of the Moretti International headquarters was like standing at the foot of a mountain made of steel and judgment. The building was a monolith of black glass that seemed to swallow the light. Sophia wore her best outfit, a navy blazer she'd bought at a thrift store and a white blouse that she had ironed 3 times. She looked professional, but to the people walking in and out of those revolving doors, men in $5,000 bespoke suits and women carrying Birkin bags, she looked exactly like what she was, an outsider. She approached the reception desk. The woman behind the marble counter didn't even look up from her screen. "I'm here to see Mr. Moretti," Sophia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The receptionist finally looked up. Her eyes scanned Sophia's shoes, scuffed, her bag, faux leather, and her lack of expensive jewelry. A smirk touched her lips. "Mr. Moretti doesn't take walk-ins. Courier deliveries are around the back." "I'm not a courier," Sophia said, pulling the black and gold card from her pocket. "He told me to come." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly when she saw the card. It was the black card, Lorenzo's direct line. Very few people possessed one. She picked up a phone, dialed a number, and whispered something. 35th floor, the receptionist said, her tone suddenly clipped and icy. "Elevator C. Don't touch anything." The elevator ride was nauseatingly fast. When the doors opened on the 35th floor, Sophia stepped into a lobby that was larger than her entire apartment building. The floor was white marble, the walls were lined with abstract art that looked like violent slashes of paint, and the silence was absolute. "You came." Lorenzo stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the city that looked like a toy set from this height. He wasn't wearing a jacket today. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms that looked strong, capable. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a fighter preparing for a bout. "I need the job," Sophia said simply, walking toward him. "And I need an advance. My mother needs surgery on Friday." Lorenzo turned. He didn't blink at her bluntness. In fact, he seemed to appreciate it. "Done," he said. "The money will be wired to your account within the hour. But before you thank me, you need to know what you just walked into." He walked over to a massive oak desk, which was covered in stacks of paper. Not neat stacks, chaotic piles. "My father built this company from nothing," Lorenzo said, picking up a file. "When he died, he left 51% to me. The other 49% is split among the board. But the board is controlled by her. Victoria." Sophia remembered the woman in the red dress. The stepmother. "Victoria Vance," Lorenzo continued, spitting the name out like a curse. "She was my father's nurse before she became his wife. She was 30, he was 70. You can do the math. Now, she is trying to prove that I am mentally unfit to run this company." "Unfit?" Sophia asked. "You seem perfectly sane to me. A little intense, maybe." "They are subtle, Sophia. Documents disappear from my desk. Emails are sent from my account that I didn't write. Meetings are removed from my calendar so I miss them. They are gaslighting me. They want to trigger a vote of no confidence and remove me as CEO. If they do that, Victoria takes control, and she will strip this company for parts." He looked at Sophia with desperate intensity. "I cannot trust my secretary. I cannot trust my VP. I cannot trust the security team. I need you to be my shadow. You will sit outside my office. You will read everything before I sign it. You will answer my personal phone. And most importantly, you will listen." "Listen to what?" "To the things they say when they think I can't hear. To the Italian. Victoria speaks it, badly. Her associates speak it. They think because I am the Americanized son, I have forgotten my roots. They think I don't pay attention." He handed her a thick tablet. "Your official title is executive assistant. Your real job is spy. Are you ready?" Sophia took the tablet. The weight of it felt heavy in her hands. She thought of her mother. She thought of Marcus and his cheap suit. She thought of the way Lorenzo had looked at the photo of the vineyard. "I'm ready," she said. "Good," Lorenzo said. "Because Victoria is on her way up here right now, and she is going to try to eat you alive." The elevator chimed, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victoria Vance walked in. Today, she wasn't wearing red. She was wearing a white power suit that made her look like an angelic assassin. She was followed by 2 men in suits, lawyers, judging by the briefcases and the weary expressions. One of them was Arthur Sterling, the company's general counsel, a man known for burying lawsuits deeper than nuclear waste. Victoria stopped when she saw Sophia standing next to Lorenzo's desk. "Oh, look," Victoria said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "The waitress. Did we run out of coffee, Lorenzo? Or are you ordering takeout?" "Sophia is my new executive assistant," Lorenzo said, his voice hard. "She replaces Ms. Halloway." "Ms. Halloway was a graduate of Yale," Arthur Sterling interjected, adjusting his glasses. "She had 10 years of corporate experience. This girl looks like she buys her shoes at a discount outlet." Sophia felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she didn't look down. She remembered what her grandmother taught her. Never let the wolves see you bleed. "I may not have a degree from Yale, Mr. Sterling," Sophia said, her voice clear and projecting across the room, "but I have a degree in dealing with difficult people, and I have excellent hearing." Victoria's eyes narrowed. She didn't like being talked back to. She walked over to Sophia, invading her personal space. She smelled of expensive perfume and gin. "Let's see how long you last, darling," Victoria whispered. Then, louder, addressing Lorenzo, "We have a problem with the Milan accounts, the Galleoni merger. The contracts are a mess. They're in Italian legalese. The translation firm is asking for 48 hours. We need them signed by 5 p.m. today, or the deal is dead." She dropped a stack of documents on the desk. It was a setup, a classic, impossible task. "Lorenzo," Victoria smiled, "since you fired your competent staff, I assume you can handle this? Or should I call the board and tell them you lost a $400 million deal because you wanted to play charity with a waitress?" Lorenzo looked at the stack of papers. He looked tired. He knew technical legal Italian was a nightmare. He was fluent, yes, but the legal nuances. If he missed one clause, he could bankrupt a division. "Leave it," Lorenzo said through gritted teeth. "Tick-tock," Victoria said, tapping her diamond-encrusted watch. She turned and marched out, her lawyers trailing behind her like obedient dogs. Silence returned to the office. Lorenzo sat down, burying his head in his hands. "She wins," he muttered. "I can't review 400 pages of technical contracts in 3 hours. I'll miss something. If I sign it and there's a poison pill clause, I'm finished." Sophia walked over to the desk. She didn't feel fear anymore. She felt anger. She hated bullies. "Move," she said. Lorenzo looked up, startled. "Excuse me?" "Move over," Sophia said, pulling a chair up next to him. She grabbed the first stack of papers. "My grandmother didn't just teach me to make soup, Lorenzo. Her brother was a notary in Siena. I used to help him organize his archives in the summers. I know legal Italian. I know the tricks." "You?" Lorenzo looked skeptical. "You hired me to be your eyes," she said, putting on a pair of reading glasses she fished from her bag. "So let me see." For the next 4 hours they worked in a trance. It was a blur of highlighters, coffee, and frantic typing. Sophia was a machine. She scanned the pages, her finger tracing the dense paragraphs. "Here!" she shouted at 2:30 p.m. "Page 42, paragraph 7. Responsibilita limitata. They slipped in a liability clause that shifts the debt to your personal holdings, not the shell company." Lorenzo looked. My God. You're right. If I signed this, Victoria could seize my personal assets to pay the merger debt. And here, Sophia pointed again at 3:15 p.m. The date, Dodici instead of due, 12 instead of 2. It delays the vesting period by 10 months, enough time for them to dilute your shares. Lorenzo stared at her. He wasn't looking at a waitress anymore. He was looking at a partner. The chemistry in the room shifted. It wasn't romantic, not yet. But it was intimate. It was two soldiers in a foxhole. At 4:55 p.m., Sophia printed the revised contracts, with the poison clauses struck out in bold red ink. Lorenzo signed them with a flourish. When Victoria walked back in at 5:15 p.m., expecting a resignation letter, Lorenzo handed her the stack. Signed, sealed, and corrected, Lorenzo said, leaning back in his chair, a rare smirk playing on his lips. You really should hire better lawyers, Victoria. Your team made 7 critical errors. Amateur. Victoria flipped through the pages. Her face went pale as she saw the red ink. She looked at Lorenzo, then she looked at Sophia. Sophia was sitting quietly in the corner, typing an email, looking the picture of innocence. You, Victoria hissed, looking at Sophia. Who are you, really? Just the assistant, Sophia said without looking up. Victoria slammed the folder shut. This isn't over. The Winter Solstice Gala is on Saturday. I expect you there, Lorenzo, and bring your staff. I'd love to introduce her to the real world. She stormed out. Lorenzo let out a long exhale. He turned to Sophia. You saved me, he said softly. I did my job, Sophia replied. No. Lorenzo stood up and walked over to her. He reached out and gently took her hand. His skin was warm, rough. You did more than that. You reminded me that I'm not fighting alone. He looked at her, his dark eyes searching hers. The gala on Saturday, he said. It's going to be a bloodbath. Victoria will try to humiliate you publicly. She will try to frame me. I need you there, but you can't go as my assistant. Then how do I go? You go as my date. The Winter Solstice Gala was the event of the season. Held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it was a gathering of the city's sharks, masquerading as philanthropists. Sophia stood in front of the mirror in the hotel suite Lorenzo had booked for her. She didn't recognize herself. The dress Lorenzo had sent was a deep, emerald green silk that hugged her curves and flowed like water. It was modest, yet devastatingly elegant. She wore diamond drop earrings that were heavy enough to pay her rent for a year, but inside the silken diamonds, she was shaking. I can't do this, she whispered to the empty room. I'm a fraud. A knock on the door interrupted her panic. It was Lorenzo. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like armor. When he saw her, he stopped dead in the doorway. For a moment, the billionaire, the titan of industry, was speechless. You look. He cleared his throat, regaining his composure. You look formidable. I feel like I'm wearing a costume, she admitted. We all are, Lorenzo said, offering his arm. Tonight is theatre, Sophia. Victoria is the villain. I am the tragic hero. And you are the wild card she didn't account for. They arrived at the Met in a convoy of black SUVs. The paparazzi flashes were blinding, a wall of white lightning. Lorenzo guided her through the chaos with a firm hand on the small of her back. His touch was grounding. Inside, the great hall was transformed into a winter wonderland of white roses and ice sculptures. A string quartet played softly, but the real noise was the gossip. As they walked in, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a wave. Who is she? Is that the waitress? I heard she's an heiress from Italy. Victoria was holding court near the Temple of Denda. She was wearing gold, looking like a queen ready for an execution. Standing next to her was a man Sophia hadn't seen before. He was young, slick, with cold blue eyes. "That's Julian Thorne," Lorenzo whispered in Sophia's ear. "The hedge fund manager who is backing Victoria's takeover. He's the money behind the betrayal." "What do I do?" Sophia asked. "Mingle," Lorenzo said. "I'm going to draw Victoria's fire. I'm going to cause a scene, distract her. While I do that, you need to get close to Julian. He's arrogant, he drinks too much, and he likes to brag. Find out when they plan to call the vote." Lorenzo squeezed her hand one last time and walked straight toward Victoria. Sophia watched as the tension in the room spiked. Lorenzo said something loud, something angry, and the crowd gasped. Sophia used the distraction to slip through the crowd toward the bar where Julian Thorne was already on his third martini. She stood next to him, ordering a sparkling water. "Water?" Julian sneered, looking down at her. "At a party like this? What a waste." Sophia turned, putting on her best mask of boredom. "Champagne gives me a headache, and I need a clear head to count my winnings." Julian laughed. "Winnings? You're Moretti's new flavor of the month, right? The little Italian girl." "I manage his personal investments," she lied smoothly. Julian's interest piqued. "Investments? Lorenzo doesn't have any liquidity left. We made sure of that." He stopped, realizing he had said too much. But he looked at Sophia, young, beautiful, seemingly harmless, and his arrogance won out. He leaned in closer, his breath smelling of gin. "You should jump ship, sweetheart," he slurred. "The SS Moretti is sinking. Tuesday morning, 9:00 a.m. Sophia's heart stopped. Tuesday. The vote was Tuesday. "Tuesday?" she asked innocently. "That's soon." "It's over," Julian grinned nastily. "We have the medical records. Faked, of course, but who checks these things? Dr. Aris was very expensive, but worth every penny. He's going to testify that Lorenzo has early-onset dementia. Power of attorney goes to Victoria. Game over." Sophia felt sick. They weren't just firing him. They were going to institutionalize him. They were going to lock him away to steal his money. She had the info. She needed to tell Lorenzo. She turned to leave, but a hand clamped onto her wrist. It wasn't Julian. It was Arthur Sterling, the lawyer. And he wasn't drunk. He was stone-cold sober and looked terrifying. "You ask a lot of questions for an assistant," Arthur whispered, his grip tightening like a vice. "Mr. Thorne talks too much. But I don't." "Let me go," Sophia said, trying to pull away. "I don't think so," Arthur said. "Victoria wants a word. In private." He began to drag her toward the exit leading to the kitchen corridors, away from the cameras, away from the safety of the crowd. Sophia looked around frantically for Lorenzo, but he was surrounded by reporters, blinded by flashbulbs, unaware that his lifeline was being dragged into the dark. She was trapped. The corridor behind the Great Hall of the Metropolitan Museum was a stark contrast to the opulence of the party. It was concrete, cold, and smelled of industrial cleaner. Arthur Sterling's grip on Sophia's wrist was bruising. "You're hurting me," Sophia said, her voice low. She wasn't panicking. She was calculating. "You're going to get in a car," Arthur said, his voice flat. "We're going to take a drive to the Hamptons. You'll stay there until Wednesday. By then, Lorenzo will be in a facility, and you'll be unemployed." He dragged her past a stack of catering crates. Sophia saw a waiter's tray resting on a rolling cart, heavy, loaded with dirty silver cutlery. She didn't hesitate. She remembered the nights at the Obsidian carrying 30 pounds of plates. She wasn't a delicate flower, she was a worker. Sophia planted her feet, twisted her wrist against his thumb, the weak point, and with her free hand shoved the rolling cart violently. It crashed into Arthur's shins. The heavy silver cutlery clattered loudly onto the concrete floor. Arthur howled in pain, his grip loosening just enough. Sophia ripped her arm free. She didn't scream. She didn't look back. She kicked off her high heels and sprinted barefoot down the service hallway, the silk of her emerald dress flying behind her like a battle flag. She burst out of the service exit onto Fifth Avenue. The cold winter air hit her exposed skin like needles, but the adrenaline kept her warm. She hailed a cab, diving into the back seat, just as Arthur stumbled out of the museum doors, looking furious. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked, eyeing her expensive dress and bare feet. Sophia's mind raced. She couldn't go home. They would find her there. She couldn't go to the office. She couldn't call Lorenzo. Her phone was in her clutch, which she had dropped in the struggle. She had to go to the source of the lie. "Mount Sinai Hospital," she said. The private wing. She remembered the name Julian Thorne had mentioned. Dr. Orris. It was 11 p.m. on a Saturday. The private clinics would be closed, but the cleaning crews would be working. Sophia knew how invisible service workers were. She had been one for 5 years. When she arrived at the medical center, she walked into the lobby. She looked like a disaster, hair wild, dress stained with street grime. She walked straight to the janitor's cart parked near the elevators. An older woman was mopping. "Excuse me," Sophia said in Spanish, gambling on the woman's background. "I was at a party. My abusive boyfriend, he chased me. I need a place to hide for an hour. Please." The woman looked at Sophia's terrified eyes. The sisterhood of survival kicked in. She handed Sophia a spare blue work smock. "Put this on. 4th floor. Don't touch anything." Sophia slipped the oversized blue shirt over her silk gown. She took the elevator up. Dr. Harris's office was dark. The door was locked. But Sophia picked up a paperclip from the reception desk. She wasn't a thief, but her cousin Vinny had taught her how to jiggle a cheap office lock when she was 12. Click. She was in. She didn't turn on the lights. Using the glow of the street lamps outside, she frantically searched the filing cabinets. Nothing. She turned to the computer. Password protected. "Think," she whispered. "Aris is arrogant, expensive." She looked around the desk. There was a framed photo of a yacht. The name on the hull was The Golden Scalpel. She tried the password. Golden Scalpel. Access denied. She tried. Victoria. Access denied. She looked at the date on the calendar. A circle around next Tuesday. Merger. She tried. Moretti? Access granted. Her heart hammered. She opened the email client. There, in the sent folder, was the smoking gun. An email thread between Dr. Aris and Victoria Vance. Subject: the diagnosis body. As discussed, the dementia diagnosis is prepared. The MRI scans have been swapped with patient X. The board will have no choice but to enact the 25th Amendment of the Corporate Charter. Payment of $2 to the Cayman account is confirmed. Sophia gasped. They weren't just lying. They were framing a healthy man to strip him of his life. She needed to print it. She hit print. The whir of the machine sounded like a gunshot in the quiet office. Suddenly, the elevator chimed in the hallway. Voices. Men's voices. "Check the office. Thorne said she might try something stupid." It was Arthur's security team. They had tracked her or guessed where she would go. Sophia grabbed the papers. She had nowhere to go. The window? 4th floor. No. She saw the air vent near the floor. It was too small. The closet. She dove into the supply closet, pulling the door shut just as the main office door burst open. Through the slats, she saw flashlight beams sweeping the room. "Computer is on," a guard said. She was here. "Find her," Arthur's voice came over the radio. "And this time, don't be gentle." Sophia squeezed her eyes shut, clutching the papers to her chest. She was trapped. She stayed there for hours, listening to them search the building. Sunday passed. Then Monday. She didn't move. She drank water from a cleaning bottle. She didn't sleep. She knew if she left, she would be caught. She had to wait for the one moment where they couldn't touch her. The board meeting. Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning broke over Manhattan with a sky the color of a bruised plum. Rain lashed against the 90-story glass facade of Moretti International, turning the world outside into a grey, weeping blur. Inside the executive boardroom on the top floor, the atmosphere was even colder than the storm outside. The boardroom was a cavernous space dominated by a 40-foot table made of polished mahogany, a table that had been in the Moretti family for 3 generations. Today, it felt less like a place of business and more like an execution chamber. Lorenzo sat at the head of the table. He looked like a man who had already died. He hadn't shaved in 3 days, the silver stubble on his jaw stark against his pale skin. His suit, usually armor, hung loosely on his frame. He wasn't looking at the documents in front of him. He wasn't looking at the board of directors, 12 of the most powerful men and women in global finance, who sat in uncomfortable silence along the sides. He was staring at his phone, which sat face down on the table, waiting, praying. Sophia had been missing for 72 hours. His private investigators had found nothing. The police had filed a report, but had no leads. She had vanished from the gala into the night, and a terrifying, cold dread had settled in Lorenzo's chest. He didn't care about the vote. He didn't care about the company. If Victoria wanted it, she could have it. He just wanted to know that Sophia was breathing. "Shall we begin?" Victoria Vance stood at the opposite end of the table. She was the picture of corporate perfection, wearing a black Chanel suit that cost more than most people's cars. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, tight bun. She didn't look like a grieving stepmother concerned for her stepson's mental health. She looked like a vulture who had finally spotted a carcass. To her right sat Julian Thorne, the hedge fund manager, looking smug and checking his watch. To her left sat Dr. Aris, a small, nervous man who kept wiping his glasses with a handkerchief. "Gentlemen, and ladies of the board," Victoria began, her voice smooth and practiced. "We are gathered here for a painful duty. You have all seen the reports. You have seen the decline in revenue over the last quarter. But more importantly, you have seen the decline in our CEO." She gestured toward Lorenzo with a look of mock pity. "Lorenzo has been erratic. He disappears for days. He makes impulsive decisions based on emotion, not logic. He hires unqualified staff, waitresses specifically, to handle sensitive legal documents. These are not the actions of a sane man. These are the symptoms of a pathology." Lorenzo didn't blink. He didn't defend himself. The fight had drained out of him the moment he realized Sophia wasn't coming back. "Dr. Aris," Victoria commanded, "please share your findings with the board." Dr. Aris stood up, his hands trembling slightly as he held a laser pointer. He clicked a button, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. An MRI scan appeared, a complex image of a human brain. "This," Dr. Aris said, his voice quavering, "is the scan taken of Mr. Moretti's brain 3 weeks ago. As you can see here in the frontal lobe, there is significant deterioration, consistent with early-onset dementia and acute stress-induced psychosis." A gasp went around the room. Signor Bianchi, the oldest member of the board, and a man who had held Lorenzo as a baby, looked stricken. "Lorenzo," Bianchi whispered, his voice trembling, "is this true? Why didn't you tell us?" Lorenzo looked up slowly. His eyes were dead. "Does it matter, Bianchi? Believe what you want. Just get it over with." Victoria smiled. It was a shark's smile. "Thank you, Doctor. The medical evidence is irrefutable. Under Article 25 of the Corporate Charter, a CEO deemed medically unfit must be removed immediately to protect shareholder value. I am moving for a vote of no confidence and the immediate transfer of power of attorney and majority control to myself as his closest living relative. Seconded, Julian Thorne said quickly. All in favour? Victoria asked, raising her hand high. Julian raised his hand, then 2 others, then 3 more. The momentum was shifting. The old guard, seeing Lorenzo's lack of defence, began to waver. Signor Bianchi hesitated, looking at Lorenzo with tears in his eyes, then slowly began to lift his hand. It was over. The legacy was gone. Bam! The heavy double doors of the boardroom didn't just open. They were violently thrown against the walls with a sound like a gunshot. The crash echoed through the silent room, causing half the board members to jump out of their skins. 2 security guards stumbled into the room, trying to grab someone. "Stop her!" one guard yelled. "She's crazy!" But the figure had already broken through. It was Sophia. But it wasn't the Sophia from the gala. She was barefoot, her feet dirty, and bleeding slightly. She was wearing a hideous, oversized blue janitor's smock over the ruins of her emerald silk dress. Her hair was a tangled mess, and there was a smudge of grease on her cheek. She looked like she had crawled out of a sewer. But her eyes were blazing with a fire that could burn the building down. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice cracking with exhaustion, but filled with authority. "Don't you dare raise those hands!" Lorenzo's head snapped up. The dead look in his eyes vanished, replaced by a shock so profound he nearly knocked his chair over standing up. "Sophia!" he choked out. "Get this trash out of here!" Victoria shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. "Security! Drag her out! She's a stalker!" The guards lunged for Sophia's arms. "Don't touch her!" Lorenzo roared. It was a sound that came from the depths of his chest, a command so powerful that the guards froze in their tracks. He moved around the table, placing himself between the guards and Sophia. "If anyone touches her, they answer to me." "Lorenzo! She is deranged!" Victoria yelled, trying to regain control of the narrative. "Look at her! She's a waitress having a breakdown!" Sophia stepped out from behind Lorenzo. She didn't look at him yet. She walked straight to the table, staring down the confused and frightened board members. In her hand, she clutched a crumpled, damp sheaf of papers. "I am not deranged," Sophia said, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. "And I am not a waitress. Today, I am the only person in this room telling the truth." She slammed the papers down in front of Signor Bianchi. "Leggilo, signore," she commanded, in perfect biting Italian. "Leggi cosa hanno fatto." "Read it, sir." "Read what they did." Bianchi looked at the dirty papers. He adjusted his glasses. "What is this?" he asked. "It's an email," Sophia said, her voice ringing clear in the silence. "Printed from Dr. Aris's private computer at 2 a.m. on Sunday, while I was hiding in his supply closet." She turned to point a shaking finger at Dr. Aris. The doctor had gone the color of ash. "Read the subject line," Sophia demanded. Bianchi read aloud, his voice trembling. "Subject, the fabrication." He paused, his eyes widening as he scanned the text. "Victoria, the swap is complete. We have replaced Lorenzo's MRI scans with those of patient X from the geriatric ward. The dementia diagnosis will hold up to casual scrutiny. Please confirm the transfer of $2 million to my Cayman account as agreed." The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the rain hitting the glass. Sophia pulled another paper from the stack. "And here is the bank transfer confirmation, dated yesterday. $2 million from the Vance Trust to Aris Medical Solutions." She threw the paper onto the center of the table. It slid across the mahogany like a blade, stopping right in front of Victoria. "It's a lie!" Victoria screamed, her face twisting into an ugly mask of rage. "She forged them! She's a con artist! She's sleeping with him!" Sophia turned slowly to face Victoria. She didn't scream. She spoke with a deadly, quiet calm. "I hid in a closet for 3 days, Victoria. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I listened to your security team, hunting me like an animal. Do I look like a con artist? Or do I look like someone who walked through hell to bring this piece of paper into this room?" Signor Bianchi stood up. He was shaking with rage. He looked at Dr. Aris. "È vero?" Bianchi roared. "Dimmelo! È vero? Is it true? Tell me, is it true?" Dr. Aris looked at the furious billionaire, then at the police sirens that were beginning to wail in the distance. Sophia must have triggered the silent alarm or called them from the lobby. "She made me do it!" Dr. Aris broke, sobbing and pointing at Victoria. "She said Lorenzo was going to ruin the company. She said it was for the greater good. I just wanted the money." The room erupted into chaos. Directors were shouting. Julian Thorne was trying to sneak toward the exit, but 2 large board members blocked his path. Lorenzo didn't look at the chaos. He turned to Victoria. Victoria was standing alone at the end of the table. Her power was gone. Her allies were gone. She looked small. "You tried to take my mind," Lorenzo said, his voice low and dangerous. "You tried to lock me away in a padded room so you could buy yachts. You aren't family, Victoria. You are a parasite." The doors opened again, and this time it was the NYPD. "Victoria Vance, Dr. Aris," the lead officer barked. "We have a warrant for your arrest based on digital evidence provided to us 10 minutes ago." As the police handcuffed Victoria, she spat at Sophia. "You're nothing. You're just the help." Sophia watched her being dragged away. "I'm the help that helped you out the door," she whispered. Within minutes, the boardroom was cleared. The directors, ashamed and apologizing profusely, filed out, leaving the 2 of them alone. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't cold. Lorenzo turned to Sophia. She was leaning against the table, her legs finally giving out. She slid down toward the floor, but Lorenzo caught her. He scooped her up into his arms, not caring about the grease on her smock ruining his $3,000 suit. He held her so tight she could barely breathe. He buried his face in her tangled, dirty hair. "You came back," he whispered, his voice thick with tears he refused to shed in front of the board. "I thought you were gone. I thought I lost you." "I couldn't let them win," Sophia mumbled against his chest, her eyes fluttering shut. "My nonna would have never forgiven me." Lorenzo pulled back to look at her. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. His thumb traced the smudge of dirt on her cheek as if it were precious gold. "You saved my life, Sophia. You saved my name. You saved everything. You saved me first," she said softly. "You gave me a chance when everyone else just saw a tray of drinks." Lorenzo looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race, even in her exhaustion. The barrier between billionaire and assistant, between employer and employee, had been incinerated in the fire of the last 3 days. "I don't need an assistant anymore," Lorenzo said. Sophia's heart sank slightly. "Oh, I understand. I should go." "No," Lorenzo said, gripping her shoulders. "I mean, I don't want you to be my assistant. I want you to be my partner in everything. I want you by my side, not taking notes, but making decisions." He paused, a small, crooked smile appearing, the first real smile in days. "And," he added, "I think I owe you dinner, but not here, not in New York." "Where then?" Sophia asked. "Tuscany," Lorenzo said. "We will go to Siena. We will find that vineyard in the photo, and we will eat ribollita until we can't move." Sophia smiled, tears finally spilling over her lashes. "That sounds expensive." "I know a guy," Lorenzo grinned. "He can afford it." He kissed her then. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a kiss of relief, of promise, and of a future that was no longer silent. Outside, the storm had broken. A single ray of sunlight pierced the clouds, illuminating the two of them in the center of the empire they had just reconquered, together. And that is how the ghost of Wall Street finally found his voice. It wasn't money that saved Lorenzo Moretti. It was 5 words of Italian spoken by a waitress who refused to be intimidated by silence. It goes to show that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the billions, but the one with the courage to speak the truth. I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of romance and revenge. If you want more stories about underdogs taking down the elite, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a twist. What would you have done if you were Sophia? Would you have run, or would you have fought? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.